Here we go, episode number 72, uploaded and coming at you here on Horse Race Bets. All right, we are now Kentucky Derby completely behind us, but I want to remind you that everything that you were studying to lead up to the Kentucky Derby, like, don't forget it. Retain it, because you're going to see all of those 3-year-olds that you were tracking from September of last year up until April of this year. A lot of those who fell off the Derby trail, right? They're coming back. A lot of them are coming back this weekend. So don't forget all that stuff you learned, and we'll talk about it again coming up in the next episode. But today, we'll focus in on exactly what's happening now. Okay, we know Sovereignty is going to skip the Preakness, and everybody's freaking out, and they're talking about maybe changing the Triple Crown. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter. Nobody's tripping off of that Triple Crown nonsense except for you. So in addition to Sovereignty skipping the Preakness, Baeza, your third place finisher in the Kentucky Derby, will also skip the Preakness and confirm they have pointed towards the 1.25-mile Belmont to be run at Saratoga on June the 7th. So that's going to be interesting to see Baeza hook up with Sovereignty again. I have to say, I was completely wrong about Baeza. I didn't think the horse was that special. I didn't think he'd get into the Derby, first off, so that was a mistake. Although, who would expect 7 horses to defect to get him in? And then, I know speed figures say, hey, he ran great races. But I had a hard time trusting those speed figures with 5-horse fields. And, a lot of folks were saying about Baeza, hey, if he really wanted to make it to the Derby, you should have run in more than those 2 prep races, and you should have, run better. But in the end, the trainer knows way more than we do, especially John Sheriffs, who I don't believe he's ever had a horse in the Derby that didn't run well. Think about that. It didn't run well. They all run well. So now that we've seen this horse, right, and the way he performed, I'm like, wow. I hope he is ready for the Belmont, because that's going to be interesting, him taking on Sovereignty. But that's what's happening with that situation, okay? So they've decided that horse is going to skip that, but we still have the Preakness coming up, right? Take a look at your field of probables. The majority of these runners have confirmed, with the exception of Michael McCarthy's horses, Bullard and Journalism. He's been talking more about Bullard going into the race and less about Journalism. But the ownership is saying that they'll make a decision on Journalism most likely by end of business today. Today's Thursday. So I would expect them to have an announcement by end of day Thursday, Friday morning at the latest, to confirm for whether they're going to go to the Preakness or not. So we'll wait on Journalism. But there you see your runners there. And it's a very interesting field of runners, right? You've got American Promise, who's got some early, not really speed, but early pace, okay? But Clever Again is fast. That horse has got some speed. Heart of Honor, who was the runner-up in the UAE Derby, if you go back and watch that race a couple of times, and it's really tough to gauge because Admire Daytona was horrible in the Kentucky Derby. And that does not flatter Heart of Honor, because Heart of Honor was all out and could not get past Admire Daytona and had the length of the stretch to do it. Now, the only encouraging thing for Heart of Honor is that he was in between horses, so it's really nice when you can see a horse that fights when in between horses. But I don't know. Good luck to Saffie Osborne and trainer Jamie Osborne. I don't think Heart of Honor is going to do well here. Pay Billy is a really tough horse that closed recently. That's a nice horse. So I expect that horse to be in a good position. Gosker is a horse that's got some pace. We know Rodriguez is going to fly out of the gate. And we know River Thames has got some speed. So it's not a tremendous amount of pace in the race, but there's enough to keep it interesting. And if Journalism chooses to sign on, I think this race suits him far better than the 1.25-mile Derby and 1.25-mile Belmont this year. All right, so also the most important thing about those horses is the jockeys will be in the irons, because that dictates a lot. D. Wayne Lucas gave Nick Juarez a lot of credit for getting American Promise out of trouble in 2 situations, but they couldn't quite win the race, but still a good job. So that means that he's going to retain that mount. So we have 7 riders confirmed for the Preakness thus far. Nick Juarez on American Promise. Irad Ortiz Jr. will return to ride River Thames. Now this time you get a new rider. Luis Saez is going to ride Gosker. That sure makes that interesting. So that's American Promise, a little bit of pace. River Thames, speed for sure. Gosker, speed. Clever Again, speed. Heart of Honor, okay. Pay Billy, closer. Rodriguez, speed. And so you see Jose Ortiz with some speed there and Clever Again. Jose is really good on the front end. And I would love to see him and Irad hook up with River Thames and Clever Again. That's going to be very interesting. And then Gosker in there with Luis Saez, who never backs down. And then you got Nick Juarez going to be sitting just off of that. And then you got Mike Smith and Rodriguez, who's most likely going to go straight to the lead. That's going to be a good one. That's going to be a good one, as we say. All right, so that's what's coming up. Still making our way to kind of finalizing the field for the Preakness, which should be final, obviously, by next week, so they don't have a whole lot of time to talk about it. But in the meantime, we want to play some action because it's a really, really great weekend card coming up. Belmont at the Big A. If the rain stays away, because there's some great turf action on Saturday, but on Thursday they get it off to a good start with a really nice late double on the turf course. I think it's so nice you can play it ice cold, as my old colleague Dave Weaver would say, ice cold. I think you can just play it straight and don't even worry about, trying to add any horses. You just need one horse in race 7, one horse in race 8. The horse in race 7 you need is Donegal Momentum. For Tom Morley, this horse gets back onto the turf course after taking a chance on the dirt in the Grade 2 Carter. First off, probably doesn't want to sprint going 7 furlongs, and also probably doesn't want the dirt, because when you look at the turf form, Donegal Momentum is outstanding. So Javier Cassiano will be in a good spot. There is some speed in the form of the 5 horse in here, but it doesn't matter. Donegal Momentum can sit just off of that and take off, and that's going to be a pretty short price favorite when they're done, I believe. But I think it's the only horse you need in that particular race. All right, so we're playing the double ice cold. You've got a horse that'll be sitting just off the pace. Then when you go to race number 8 to wrap it up on the turf course, you've got the horse that'll be, I think, on the lead. There's only one other horse with pace in this race. So the 3 Pandemic Hero, with that man again, right? With Javier Castellano in the irons. Ooh, we're going to have ourselves a JC double. That looks great. Anyway, he's got some speed. And what I like is, of course, the performance on the turf course, showing some speed, consistently gets out there on the front end and should be out there. The 9 horse in this race with Kendrick Carmouche does have some speed, but I think the 3 is quicker, and I think it's just better. And so I think it's pretty simple, right? Either it works or it doesn't, but I'm not going to waste a lot of money trying to get it right. 1, 3, cold, $10 double. Race number 7 is where it starts. Belmont at the Big A, coming up here on this Thursday. Ooh-wee, that'll be exciting. This is a nice little momentum to carry us into the weekend. All right, so that gets us to the end of our edition number 72 here on Thursday. Preakness, still taking a look at what's happening as that field continues to take shape. Also the Belmont taking shape as well, even though that's on June 7th. And that card's going to be crazy. And then, as I was talking about, all the studying that we did starting in September of last year all the way up until end of April, for all the horses that fell off the Triple Crown Trail, or fell off the Derby Trail, to be specific, those horses are coming back, including my boy Hill Road. They're coming back this weekend. Come on, bro. So there are going to be a couple of horses that you've seen before, you liked. Go back to your notes or whatever you've retained and hear about those horses, because now we're going to start seeing them all run. The thing that is really important about this whole Triple Crown thing is that, yes, the Triple Crown is a great accomplishment and it stands in history forever, right? When you do that, you're immortalized. They never forget you. But don't forget that those aren't the only races for 3-year-olds. The entire summer is jam-packed full of great races for 3-year-olds. So even if those horses don't necessarily run in the Derby, Preakness, or Belmont, there's still so many chances for them to come back, right? You got the Travers, they can come back into that situation. You've got the Derbies, Ohio, Pennsylvania, whatever the other Derby is, right? So you've got chances for them to make some money and to strut their stuff. So just keep that in mind. Just keep that in your back pocket. All right, that's going to do it for us here on episode number 72 on Horse Race Bets. In the meantime, in between time, until next time, I'm Ken Rudulph. I will see you then. Good luck and enjoy whatever you're into. Hey, play that double, seriously. Belmont at the Big A, play that double. It's going to be ice cold, just ice cold.